This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations.
We want families to come here and gain insightful strategies that empower them to successfully teach diverse learners at home.
Hosted by founder and CEO of SPED Homeschool, Peggy Ployer.
Our goal is that these powerful weekly conversations will boost your confidence to cultivate the best at-home learning environment for your student.
For more homeschool resources, go to spedhomeschool.com. You're listening to Empowering Homeschool Conversations with Peggy Ployer.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations. Today, we are going to talk about ways to include grandparents in at-home learning. And my special guest is Leilani Melendez. Leilani is a homeschooling mom of 4 kids, and she applies her 10 plus years of experience as a middle school classroom teacher to provide homeschool evaluator services to Florida families. She also shares guidance, resources, and support through her YouTube channel, Living with Eve, and other social media platforms, and has recently wrote Freedom to Learn, Choosing Your Path to Homeschool Victory, a book that covers the basics to help new homeschooling parents get started, but also delves deep and shares parent stories that encourage even the most seasoned homeschooling parent. Leilani's youngest has Down syndrome, which has inspired her to start connecting with other families on similar journeys to share support, information, and encouragement, because all families are exceptional. Oh, isn't that so true? Welcome, Leilani. I'm glad to have you back on the show. Actually, Leilani has even been a host on this show, so she's well seasoned at this. I'm glad to have you back.
Thank you.
So grandparents, I know we had a request, and when I reached out to you, said, I think I can talk on that. Had some experience. So I would just love for you to share a little bit of your background that wasn't covered in your bio, that maybe kind of relates to this topic, but also if our viewers have never heard one of your conversations with us, just a little bit about you before we get started.
Okay. So I'm Leilani Melendez. I have a YouTube channel, Living with Eve, and a website, Living with Eve. And I just basically share our journey as a homeschooling family. My youngest daughter has Down syndrome, like she mentioned before, and I used to be a former public and private school teacher. So my passion is to see that parents are encouraged to homeschool their kids. I see a lot of fear out there in the community, and it's really when you want to do something and you're determined, you can do it. It doesn't
Absolutely.
take brain surgery to teach your kids. It might be hard. It might feel like it, but
right. Yeah.
And just that you're not alone in this journey. And so I share all my things, and I've got over 500 videos. Some are informal, some are just our day in the lives, some are interviews, it's just a mix of, I've been doing it for almost 6 years now.
That's awesome.
So
yeah.
And go ahead.
Oh no, I it's just a great channel. I just you've got so much good content on there, and I know you have some just a very responsive community, and so that's neat that you have that platform just to speak from and to be able to share, just the everyday life. And I love that. Nothing pre-scripted. It's all just kind of this is what it's like, and then sharing just resources too that you found helpful.
And of course I share my faith as well,
Mhm.
which was unique because we go to a Messianic congregation, but I mean, we believe Jesus is Messiah and all the things. So it's unique. A lot of people really want to hear our perspective. So we share that too. It's very multi everything.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's all, we are not cookie cutter people. God makes us so unique. And I think the more we embrace that uniqueness, the more we allow others to do the same. And it's like, oh, I don't have to fit in this box. And especially in our community, a lot of our kids try as hard as we might. We're not going to fit them in a box in any way, shape, or form. And to accept that and to just run with that freedom and to just be at peace with we don't have to look like anybody else. My child doesn't need to look like anybody else, and that's okay.
And that's what's so beautiful, because you can tailor everything to meet their needs.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to worry about the benchmarks, and you don't have to worry about what the public school system is trying to do. And, you can just they can be them and put what you think is priority first in their lives. So I'm really passionate about that. So
Very cool.
really big on
Yes.
family too.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to be talking about today is family. So how have grandparents been involved in your homeschool and how did that actually get started?
My mother-in-law she's just really big on family. Um, I mean, both of my grandparents are from Puerto Rico. Or actually sorry, I keep referring to abuela and abuelo. Um, they're my kids' grandparents, but in
Mhm.
Spanish. Um, my side of the family, my dad's around, but my mom has passed away. So, my dad's he can't really be involved with homeschool. So we do rely on my grandparents or my father and mother-in-law. Sorry. I always feel like
Yeah.
my kids. I know you
Yeah.
know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I
Absolutely.
rely on them so much for babysitting, for even when I had kids. That's kind of how it started. When I
Really?
started
Yeah.
having
Mhm.
babies, I needed somebody to watch, the baby when I went into labor. So she would take him
Right.
on, and that happened. And then when I needed just free time or needed to go to work, or not, I
Right.
don't go to work. I was a teacher, but for a while, I resigned from teaching when my oldest was 3.
Okay.
So she did kind of step in and watch a little bit. And so then, I don't know, it just kind of, she was always there.
Right.
And
Yeah.
when Naomi was born, all the therapies and having to juggle her therapies, the kids wanting to go to co-op and making sure
Right.
that they all have something to do. Me and my husband couldn't do it by ourselves. And so she
Right.
kind of stepped in. She has so much energy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she really does. And she has lots of giftings that I don't have. And so she just by default kind of fit into it. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I
just
love
naturally.
love that yeah, I have so many friends now that are grandparents and they so want to be involved in the lives of their grandkids and their kids and that is just it's cool to see and especially when the family embraces that from both sides that that this is a great relationship. Let's make the most of, everybody's gifts like you said um, and see how we can work together because it really benefits your entire family. It benefits your kids and you, and in different ways. And that it's
Yeah,
just
it
yeah,
does.
helpful all around.
Definitely. She her giftings, her talent, she cleaned houses for a living.
Oh wow!
And I hate cleaning.
Right, I do too.
And so for so long, she would clean my house just to help out around the house. But then what's happened with the kids, because if I hate cleaning, I'm not the best at teaching my kids how to clean. Um,
Right.
she would step in and start teaching them how to clean all those little details. And I guess
Yeah.
the biggest thing is I keep forgetting that education is not just reading, writing, rhetoric, math, those kind of things. That education is
Exactly.
also practical things as well.
Absolutely, and that stuff matters a lot.
Yeah.
And yes. So, and the problem is that we don't I mean, you can buy a curriculum with, s skills like that, but the way they're best taught is in the practice of, "We're here in the kitchen, let's wipe the counter off."
Yeah.
And
And
so
she
now
has
let's
all
take
these
out a book.
crazy She has these crazy secrets that I
Ah,
didn't know. She's like, "You could get this and mix with this and put this, and this works." And so every time, like, there was one time that the kids drew all over the couch, she
oh
actually
my.
came over with permanent marker. And she actually came over and she's like, "All right, guys, we are gonna clean this up." And so she
Wow.
made her little concoction. It involved vinegar, and they got a scrubby brush, and everybody was scrubbing the couch together. And that's to me, that's homeschooling because I didn't know how
Oh,
to
yeah.
do that. I was like, let's throw out the couch and buy a new one. Like that's my
Right.
mentality.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
But she
yeah.
knows she has a different she just brings in that little bit of extra
Right.
into and she's
Yeah.
making an imprint on their lives.
Mhm.
that
Absolutely.
yeah, so there's
Yeah.
no how a lot of us will sometimes just cut off the grandparents, like, "Okay, this is our family, me and my husband, we're gonna raise them the way that we want to," and there's this sever, but
Yeah.
and I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but she just brings in
Hmm.
so much, and it's all she always says to me, it's like she gets a second chance to
Oh, yeah.
teach,
Yeah.
it's like she's like she missed this with her son, so
Right.
now she gets to skip the generation and imprint it now on her
Oh,
grandchildren.
that's beautiful.
And,
Yes. Yeah.
I fought it a lot in the beginning,
Hmm. Yeah.
and, because I wanted that, "Okay, no, this is our family, stay away," kind of thing.
Right.
And, it took a while, but I started to realize that that's what God would want is,
Yeah.
family, community,
Mhm.
and not just being alone.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it does take that step back perspective, that I've done this. I wish I would have done it this way. And I see that now as an older parent, and especially since my kids are kind of getting to that age where I could be a grandparent soon. And going, oh man, if I could redo it over, this is what I would do. And embracing that, but having um a child and their spouse be willing to include that. Yeah, it was something that, yeah, like you said, you have to let go of some things, and your ideals, because you may not always agree on that. Has So you said it was a little bit of a struggle.
It was a
Is there
lot.
any tips you have on how to get through that?
Um, some
Lots of
she
prayer.
yeah, it did. It took a lot of prayer. Um, she kinda comes in like a bulldozer, which,
Mhm.
you know what? Now I've learned to really embrace that because
Yeah.
of our society in general. Like, I think our society is like, "No, I can do it myself. I can do it myself. I got this."
Right.
But in reality, we're suffering and trying to juggle all these things and
Yep.
play God, thinking we can
Mhm.
do it all.
Absolutely.
But she taught me, she always says this, she says, "Don't take no for an answer. If there's someone
Mm.
that the Lord places on your heart that needs help, and you go to them and you say, 'Hey, I'm here to help,' and they say no, then you pray, and if the Lord really wants you to keep going, just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and they will eventually crack." And I know that sounds so awful. And I've tried that. I'm not much of a pusher like some people are,
Right,
but I've noticed that eventually people are like, "Oh, thank you so much for watching my kid the other day when I needed to clean
right.
my house," or "Thank you so much for bringing me food. I know I didn't want it, but
Mhm.
thank you so much."
Right.
So, and I think it just really builds community,
Yeah,
and I think it
absolutely.
builds family
Yeah.
too.
Mhm. Exactly. Because some of us we have family that's community, and some, like a lot of people that, like at our church, they're transplants from other areas. Houston is just kind of this big melting pot, and so a lot of our church people, older within the church, kind of adopt families like their second family, and do the same types of things. But I think culturally, like you said, we have this automatic response of, no, I can do it myself. So no, I don't need your help. But yes, you do have to kind of push that, just to let them know, I do care. I care so much that I'm gonna just keep pushing. So I
Yeah,
guess
or
that's,
just show up at your
yeah,
house.
right, exactly.
There was many, many times she would just show up at my house, and she wanted so much to bless us. Like, it was all in
Oh,
love, and it
wow.
took me a while to understand that's where it was coming from because I was taking it as, like, she's intruding. She thinks I'm doing a bad job, and she
Mm,
wants to do it better. And so I had to work through that and realize that it was coming from a place of, "I see that you need help, and I want to be there to help."
right.
And,
Yes.
it took some fights. There were some serious fights where we didn't speak to
Oh,
each other
wow.
for weeks. Yeah, no, seriously. This was like, how long have me and my husband? 16 years? Almost like knockdown fights. But, like, what a screaming, like, when we moved into our new house, we had, like, a full-blown screaming match because she started decorating my house, and I was like,
Oh,
"Let
wow.
me decorate my own house." Um, and sh it's just but it's coming from a place of love is where it's coming from.
Right.
And
Yeah.
my husband did have to kind of coach me on that a little bit, but and the Lord, I mean, he had to work with me on
Right.
it. And even
Yeah.
with homeschooling, for a long time, I thought, she was coming in here because she's very opinionated too. I mean,
Hmm.
I think a lot of grandparents are,
Yeah.
um, which is a good thing because they see it from an outside perspective, but they don't always say it in the nicest ways because
Right.
they're your parents or they're your grandparents and they feel like they can just, there's no filter.
Right.
And so, she comes in and she would throw things around like, "You really shouldn't be doing that with her, and you shouldn't be doing this. Maybe you should send her." Well, one of them was she wanted me to send her to private school
uh,
instead, and so that one was one of the ones that I fought back, but
mhm.
eventually there was a conversation, and she loves the Lord so much, and she
Mm.
did go to the Lord a lot, and she came back, she was very humble, and she's like, she had a conversation with me where the Lord spoke to me and he showed me how beautiful you are and how hard you work and
Mm.
how you're juggling so many things and you're probably one of the best moms I know. And, that kind of
Oh. Mm.
conversation made me realize that it's not I'm better than you and I'm going to fix all these things. It
Right.
was, and not all grandparents do that either,
Hmm. No, exactly. Yeah.
it was,
Yeah.
but they may think that, I don't know.
Right.
So even if they
Yeah.
don't think that, it's coming from a place of love usually,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
'cause I
worth the
know.
fight. It's, the drawing the battle lines and having, those truces and conversations. Because in the end, what you're talking about that has come out of all of this, it was very probably, yeah, really messy at the beginning. But yeah, but to see how it's now blessing your family. So let's talk a little bit about that as some of the positives you've seen now that have made that worth everything.
Okay. Um, well, I think the relationship with their grandparents that they have,
Yeah.
because I didn't have a relationship with my grandparents, and now that they're passed away, I wish I did.
Yeah.
The fact that, I mean, they always say it takes a village to raise a child, and
Mhm.
they're not just hearing from me and dad, they're also hearing from people outside of the household
Right.
that love them, um, spiritually too.
Yeah.
That's a big deal because, I mean, she'll read Bible stories to them and all the things.
Oh, that's awesome.
Um, so there's that. Practically speaking, when it comes to the homeschool side of things, she's so willing to teach them whatever I give her.
Hmm.
I think that's because she does, even though she's intense, she has a humble
Right.
heart. She's very intense.
Oh, yeah.
She does have a humble heart. I almost feel like there's a lot of grandparents that are like that. Like they do have a
Yeah.
humble heart, but the outside, the
Mhm.
shell is hard and
Right.
intense. Um, but she'll whatever I give her, she'll take it and she'll do it, but she'll do it with her style. Like she'll add things, she'll be
Ah,
creative with
yes.
it.
Mhm.
Um, the way she executes it is
Mhm.
different than the way I would execute it, but it's okay
Yeah.
because it's her personality that she's embedding on the kids. So, specifically with Naomi, though,
Hmm.
she has Naomi every Tuesday.
Okay.
That's her day with Naomi. And I feel like I always joke around and say it was written in the marriage contract that she has to see her grandkids once a week. So she has Naomi all day Tuesday, and then when we come home, she sees the other kids because we do
Okay.
co-op. I take the kids to co-op on Tuesdays,
Ah, okay.
and so both her and her husband actually come over to our house.
Wow.
Um, Her husband usually helps my husband out, like,
Hmm.
with handiwork around the
Oh,
house,
that's
like fixing
neat.
things and
Yeah.
stuff. So, because there's a lot to fix when you have 4 kids. Um,
Oh, yeah.
but what's cool about that is we have the grandfather, abuelo,
Mhm.
who is so good. He's Mr. Fix-It. He can fix anything. I mean, anything. Things that I would like, "Oh, I gotta buy a new one of this." And he's like, "Wait, hold on." We've
Wow.
broken the door off of our refrigerator 3 times.
Oh my goodness.
This sounds so bad. Our refrigerator is supposed to be a nice refrigerator, but the kids leave it open, like that little bit of a crack,
Oh,
and then
yes.
it's like
Uh-huh, and then the
and then they're
seal
like
loosens
yeah,
and yeah,
and then
mhm.
they're like, "Oh, no, it's stuck," and they start yanking it,
Oh.
and it just breaks off. So, he comes over, he's like, "Okay, this is how you fix it," and he'll
Mm,
show, Ethan, who is kind of my handyman, in the family, how to fix it,
yeah.
and so get Ethan involved with fixing it, and that to me is homeschooling,
Oh, absolutely.
you
Yes.
know? And then we have my mother-in-law, who's actually the other thing too, going back to abuelo, his thing that he did with Hannah when she was like 5 or 6, and the same we've always been doing Tuesday co-ops,
Okay.
11 years. And, we would always leave, like, the younger kids with abuela and abuelo to watch and do whatever.
Right.
Um, Hannah and abuelo used to, for hours, just do Play-Doh,
Oh,
and
wow.
he would do letters with her, he would make cakes with her, he's like, "I never had a daughter, and now I get to play
Oh.
with Play-Doh with my granddaughter." Like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so that is huge, like, and now
Mhm.
with fine motor skills, you can even see, like, with her handwriting
Oh,
and
yeah.
with sewing, like,
Mm,
her fine and drawing, because of all that Play-Doh work and that strengthening with the fingers, it just has
right.
paid off, and her creativity too, because now
Yeah.
she's sewing, and, like, the other day, we did bow making, we made a bunch of bows for some friends,
Uh-huh.
and, we also did what else did we do? Oh, we did perler beads, which
Oh,
is a lot of
yeah.
fine motor
Uh-huh.
stuff
Yes.
just for fun.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that's how he helped out with her, and then he's helping Ethan out with handiwork around the house, and then, well as so anyway, so they come over on Tuesday,
Uh-huh.
and, they literally will spend, of course, the entire day. Abuela, takes Naomi to therapies in the morning, and she
Oh,
will. So
wow.
they do swim therapy and speech therapy. So
Okay.
it's amazing, and I
Yeah.
love swim. It's physical therapy,
Right. Yep.
and so she sits in with all the sessions, and she
Cool.
watches, and
Uh-huh.
then she'll implement the things that she learns, especially with the speech therapist, or even, I mean, if they go swimming, we
Yeah.
go swimming a lot in Florida, but
Mhm. Yeah.
mostly from the speech therapist. She'll bring that stuff home and she'll tell me about it, but then
Oh,
she
that's
also
awesome.
continues to work with Naomi
Hmm.
on her sounds and her letters,
Oh,
and,
cool.
I always leave, like, a stack of books that I want her to read with Naomi and practice reading on, and so
Mhm.
she'll do that, but implement speech in there, and so that's what she does, and then she'll take Naomi and they'll clean. And so
Ah,
Naomi has developed this love. That's the other thing too, because as a parent, it's hard
yes.
to talk
Yeah, if you
it's
don't
hard
like it.
yeah, well, that and it's sometimes hard to give them a love for something because you're
Yes.
mom. Does
Mhm.
that make sense?
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
I love math. I don't know.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, I do
I
too.
love it. And I'm like, "You should love your math. Like, look how
Right.
fun this
Uh-huh.
is." You're like, "No, no."
No.
But when Oella comes over and she's doing cleaning with Naomi, I start doing dishes. Next thing I know, Naomi's up next to my side, on a Thursday or Friday when
Oh,
I'm doing dishes.
right.
Naomi's next to me and she's taking all the plates and sticking them in the dishwasher for me. And I'm like, "Oh,
Oh.
okay." And
Uh-huh.
for a season, she hasn't done this lately. And I'm kind of sad that she hasn't. I need to start going back to this. But she would take all the clean clothes out of the dryer. Like, she would wake up in the morning, she would go straight for the dryer, pull out all the clean clothes, and she would put them in the loft and she would start folding them.
Oh,
And
wow.
she was doing this when she was 6, and they weren't perfect,
Yeah.
but she had her own way of folding them, which is much nicer than I would, even though they weren't perfect. But she would lay them out, fold the corners in, and she would take her time. And
Oh.
I don't even know. I
Yeah.
would scrunch it up and throw it in the drawer,
Yep.
which
Yep.
is awful, and that's a very sad
I always tell
confession,
people when they
but
come to my house, do not look behind any cupboard door or in any drawer. Everything looks nice from the outside.
yeah. Yeah, no, but they'll go through all of Naomi's drawers, and Abuela will show Naomi how to fold things up and put them in the drawers, and she'll do colors with her, like color coding,
Oh,
um,
that's
the
awesome.
clothes in the
Right.
closet.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that as a grandparent, I mean, you know the things that your kids needed for different stages. Yeah, let's teach this. As a parent, we know that, but we have some like 10 other things in their mind going on as well as what we know. And they can just take that one thing and say, oh, we can focus on this. Um and that allows your child then to not have that racing anxiety. We got to get through this because there's so much else to get done. We can just
yes.
dwell in this, and what a gift that provides them, because then it does allow them to embrace it as this is something fun, this is something we can just be in the moment, and I can be at peace, and it's not something that you're looking to grade me on.
Mhm.
And have me finish complete so we can move on to the next thing. We're just in the moment of it. um
I feel
and
like
yeah.
that's the gift of grandparents because
Yeah.
they've been through raising kids,
Mhm.
and then they realize sometimes just slowing down and taking time and showing all the little details on how to do something is the
Yeah.
most effective way of teaching
Yeah. It
instead
really
of having
is.
to rush through everything. "Oh, I gotta get this done
Mhm.
and this done and this done." So,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's gotten to the point where Tuesdays, I mean, I have that stack of books that she can go through, and she
Mhm.
does, but I feel like Tuesdays, it's Abuela's turn to take Naomi.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Just lessons that happen upon that day,
Mhm.
and that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome, and really, I mean, she's learning how to grab that passion of those grandparents of hers. Each of your kids are. It sounds like with the handyman types things. If your husband isn't as gifted in that, it's always great to pull other people in that have those passions that we don't,
Mhm.
because our kids are different than us, and they are gonna need somebody that shows them how to use those gifts that we don't have personally, and to be able to have somebody that's so devoted and so in love with them and wanting their best, and then spending all that time with them. And it's not, it's quality time. It really is quantity time
Mhm.
that your in-laws are pouring into your kids, and what a blessing that is, for sure.
Yeah, definitely, and I mean, the biggest thing I would say for young parents
Hmm.
would be to let their grandparents feed into their lives,
Yeah.
and don't keep your kids away from them, even though you may not want that to happen because they drive you crazy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yes, I know. I would often send my boys off with my dad, and he would forget to feed them.
Oh.
And he'd be like, "Why are they so grouchy?" And I'm like, because they haven't eaten in I don't know how many hours." So, yeah, so the back and forth of that, again, it's just they're in a different season of life. They don't
Mhm.
get as hungry. They you think about these things, it's like, "Oh, yeah, maybe I should have packed a snack and not left that up to him." But
Right.
you just kinda learn as you go. Your kids are resilient, and they'll make it through.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But yeah, and then there are some grandparents though that, like my parents, they adopted 10 kids after I left the house.
Oh,
And
wow.
so they always had to be at their house. They couldn't come to my house because they were doing caretaking for kids. Was I mean, I have 10 adopted siblings, all with special needs.
Wow.
And so we would have to go to their house. And I'm kind of made it a priority that we would drive all the way across town to get my
Mhm.
kids to my parents. And so sometimes you just have to be creative if there's certain things that come up. And we actually worked out to kidnap my mother for an entire weekend. I worked out, care for all my siblings with my dad, and that I could buy a plane ticket and take my mom to New York for 3 days because she really
Nice.
had no time to spend with my daughter. And so that memory of those 3 days in New York with my mom, she finally got to know her granddaughter, and so there are circumstances, but there are ways around that. It may not look like you having somebody on a weekly basis, but you've got to just pray and say, how can we increase this relationship? And there's got to
Yeah, I have
be a
to do
way.
that with my dad. I have to push
Mhm.
because my dad's health makes it so that he can't always make it out. I mean, he got a Tesla now,
Right.
so now he can drive anywhere.
Oh, that's awesome.
It is awesome, but, either way, I still have to push with him to get my
Right.
kids together with him, and, which is funny because he came over yesterday, which was awesome.
Oh, that's really neat. And it is physically taxing to
Yeah.
be around little children for a long period of time, especially if you do have health issues, and so just honoring your parents on the other side of being able to say, yes, we're only going to spend this much time. We value our children
Mhm.
spending time with you, but we know that this is, difficult, and so we'll do our best. It all goes back again to, are we having the conversations? Um, are we, talking back and forth, developing the boundaries that everybody needs to make these relationships happen? And so, and I
Yeah.
even know some people that are in our community, they're sandwiched. They've got grandparents living in their house, and they've got their kids living in their house, and they're caring for both. And and so there's, again, it goes back to, how do we develop those, your space, their space, our space,
Right.
and how do we respect everybody's,
That's hard.
what they need? Yeah, it's really hard.
That's hard.
Yeah.
I know a couple families that are like that, and I don't know how they do that, but I also know it
Mhm.
teaches the kids how to put others first.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of times, just within this community, I've heard a lot of people, grieving, well, my one child, they have to give up so many things. And we look at it from that perspective because their sibling needs this, and but we fail a lot of times to see the benefit side of what comes with those restrictions, because those restrictions limit us from going way beyond ourselves and way beyond what God wants in our lives
Mhm.
too. Yeah.
Now I know it's not the same thing as a grandparent, but I when I was a kid, I spent 8 years with my mom. Pretty much we didn't know if she was gonna make it or not. She was battling cancer,
Wow.
and she was on her deathbed for 8
Mm,
years. So my entire teenage she passed away when I was 18,
wow.
and there were a lot of things that I was restricted from doing.
Mhm.
And I mean, the only thing that really kept me going was dance. My dad
Mm.
took me to dance every week or every day
Oh,
actually, because I was in dance every day. But there was many times I had to miss dance class, even miss school because I had to
wow.
take my mom or drive her down to get chemo or to a doctor's appointment
Mm,
or something like that. And so I was not getting the things.
right.
But it taught me to have compassion
Right.
on someone else. One of the biggest takeaways is that it taught me of important it was for families to
Mm,
stick together till the end. And
right.
even with grandparents, like, you see these kids are seeing their parents taking care of their parents, and
Absolutely.
regardless of the situation, they're there, and
Yeah.
they're gonna take that on. So, if you wanna look at it selfishly, like, when I'm old and frail, like, my kids will
Right. Yeah.
but, not I mean, but it shows compassion. I think that's also
Right.
played it helps with
Mhm.
relationships, but it's also played into my marriage with my husband
Oh,
that
yes.
yeah, like,
Mhm.
nothing's gonna separate us.
Yeah.
When you have a parent or someone in your household that is suffering and in pain, like money
Mhm.
doesn't matter, petty things don't matter. What
Right.
matters is that person.
Yeah.
And it really changes your perspective on a lot of things.
Absolutely.
And as sad as it is, because everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." And there's times when I'm
Mm.
sad, but
Right.
I gained so much from that.
Hmm.
And I don't know how to explain it. I guess it's one of those things that you, as a young child, like it's embedded in your mind. Like you take care of people, that's priority,
Right. Yeah.
and family is
Mhm.
important.
Yeah.
Um,
And we focus so much in homeschooling on character training. But that kind of character training is what we live out in front of our kids, and they will copy that because that is embedded in them so much more than us, having a good Bible story and saying, this is what, compassion is. And but yet when we live it out on a day-to-day basis, our kids know it. They know the importance of it. They see how we've prioritized it and that it's a family value that carries on. There's just those things that now that I have adult kids that, like work ethics in our house that were perpetuated that I see them living out without thinking. They don't have
mhm.
to think about it because it's so ingrained in them that this is how we function as a family. This is how you function as an individual, and it shapes their worldview from the inside out
Yeah,
versus the outside in.
right. And they may
Mm.
not like it during
Oh
the
yeah, no.
going through it, because I
Yes,
also
they have a
think
lot of
about it.
stories.
Oh, we got a lot of stories. I mean, I spent my 16th birthday in the hospital, and a
Mm,
cake was brought to me, but the nurses brought me my birthday cake.
wow. Yeah.
So, and of
Yep.
course, everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, I feel so bad." I'm like, "No," because I really didn't need a birthday party. I knew
Mhm.
that I needed to be there because she was going through a bone marrow transplant at the time.
Wow.
So, I needed to be there because I didn't
Mhm.
know, it was more important for me to be with my mom than to celebrate my birthday, you know? Like
Wow.
those kind of
Yeah.
things, like priority takes place,
Yeah, it
family,
does.
people,
Yeah.
and I think
Mhm.
that's the way the Lord would want us to walk.
Absolutely.
So, and
Yes.
I those people that are, those parents that are taking care of kids and grandparents, like that's tough,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
And if they
Yeah.
have a child with a disability at home on top of that, and it's so lonely too.
Right.
That's the other
Yeah.
thing, you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's why I like social
Yep.
media. Like they
Yes.
that's the nice thing about social media because then they know they're not alone.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not a fix for a best friend, but it does let you know you are not alone.
Yeah.
There's so many people out there. I know just two people on the SPED homeschool team have had to step back because they both had their parents move in the
Mm,
last year. They've had to rearrange their houses, and not only with their special needs kids, but also navigate doctor's appointments for their parents now,
yeah.
and advocating, what's going on, and that it's just a huge responsibility. But it is a season, and it's a teachable season. Um, and I know that's we all go through those, and they do make us stronger. We don't
Yeah.
like them.
Yeah. I told my dad he can move in with us, but he don't wanna move in.
Oh.
He won't move in.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
always joke about that with him. But yeah,
Right.
he's
Mhm,
really in my side of the family. The reason, Eric's side of the family, my husband is we've got so many people
mhm.
because they're Hispanic. I think it's
Right,
cultural.
I think
The
it's a
Hispanic
cultural
community,
thing. Yeah.
like they're just
Uh-huh,
so,
absolutely.
and I love it. And I actually remember admiring that so much when I was young.
Hmm,
Um, but on my side of the family, pretty much everyone has passed away except
wow.
for my father and my sister. That's
Hmm,
literally that's it.
that's a
So,
wow.
yeah.
Yeah,
So we have each
yeah.
other.
Right. Yeah, yeah, but God has blessed you with your husband's family and
Yes.
that whole support system, and that's amazing. Because yeah, we're attracted to sometimes the opposite, and I saw the same thing with my husband's family. They were very outgoing. They spent all this time together, and then my family's like, no, we've had our couple hours. We're done.
Yeah.
And so yeah, but it's good for our kids though to see, how we can embrace people from both of those perspectives
Mhm.
too. Yeah.
And allowing them to feed into their lives too.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So, um, uh, so as far as other than cleaning and like
Handyman
handiwork and
work.
those types of things, and you mentioned that your mother-in-law teaches things differently. Did
Her
you?
imprint.
Yes. Did Did you have how did you handle letting go of a lesson? I mean, let's focus on that because, I can see in my head, this is the way it's supposed to be done. This is the way the curriculum says it should be done. And then it's not happening anywhere near that.
That took a lot of prayer. I had to humble myself because at that point, me and her have been in already so many confrontations and
Right.
arguments to
Uh-huh.
the point where I had to just go, "Okay, God, I know I can't do it all right now. I'm in a
Yeah.
season where I can't."
Hmm.
I do know there was, so she had been, um I don't wanna use the word nag or bug or convincing me, let's say, to
Mhm.
send when Naomi had her open heart surgery, for example, she was like, "I know you wanna homeschool, but your daughter is having open heart surgery, and she's 6 months. Can you at
Mm.
least send Hannah to preschool or VPK or something? Because you need to be there for Naomi." And
Mm.
I didn't want to. I eventually caved and I did send Hannah to VPK. And so
Mm.
that was my big letting go for that
Ah, yes.
year that we
Uh-huh.
did. And that was hard. But that was
Mhm.
also the same year that she had her open heart surgery. Um, and also, the surgery was so, and see, that's another thing that's so
Mm.
great about having grandparents when you have a child that has a disability. The surgery, there was issues, there was some
Oh,
stuff that
wow.
happened, not life-threatening, just
Mhm.
annoying, but
Yeah.
she had to stay in the hospital for a month.
Oh, wow.
And my mother-in-law actually took my 3 other kids,
Hmm.
and they stayed with her the entire month. So
Wow.
I lived in the Ronald McDonald House for that month or in
Hmm.
her bedroom, and I was there to advocate for Naomi.
Right,
No
yeah.
offense to the doctors or nurses, but there were quite a few times where I had to step in and
Mm.
advocate. There was
Wow.
one time I watched, those little drainage tubes,
Yeah, mhm,
right?
yeah,
I
yeah.
watched a doctor trip on it, knock it over, and it splash over, and then when they did their rounds, they were like, "Wow, this is not measuring right. We need to uppermit it." I went, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." I saw the
Yeah.
doctor splash and knock it over. I had pictures. I would take pictures,
Oh, yes, I have
and I
another friend that
learned
does the
this.
same thing,
Yeah,
yes,
I learned
absolutely.
this when my mom was ill, to constantly take pictures and,
Hmm,
um, because you have to advocate because
right.
you're the one that loves them.
Mhm,
Um
absolutely.
So, I had pictures to prove it, I had to advocate for her, but I at this moment, because abuela and abuelo took my 3 other kids, I was able to be there for Naomi,
Right.
and I had to let go of
Hmm,
them because I guess that's the big turning point for me was the open heart surgery because I knew that I could not do this. Like, it was life-threatening,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
so and at that point, I mean, with the exception of decorating my house, because that one like, that was not life-threatening.
Right,
I didn't want
exactly.
her to
Push back
decorate
a
my
little bit on
house.
that. And you had the energy to push back.
Yeah, that one I didn't wanna cave because I knew that if, like, the decorating didn't get done right away, nobody was gonna be, like, suffering. So,
Right, yes.
I pushed back on that one. And, but with my other kids, when she's like, "Oh, we came home, we did this," we pulled out the Play-Doh, we cut out the scissors, "Look at this art project that I made
Mhm.
with Naomi or with Hannah," and I just was like,
Uh-huh.
And sometimes I would hand her curriculum, like, they need to get their math done.
Mhm.
And there were days that it wouldn't get done. And so it was like, okay, Lord, you're in charge. And I know that I cannot do this.
Right.
I've got
Yeah.
too much on my plate.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, he'll put us in those situations so that we can that something has to spill,
mhm,
and we can let go of things because we hold on so tightly, and I think the more that, and especially, you've been homeschooling for a while as well as I
yeah,
have, and the mentality of homeschooling, it has changed a lot since COVID, but was that it's all up to you, and now there's just so many resources out there where, there's tutors and there's online classes and all these things, and more people are saying, where do I send my child? But,
mhm,
I homeschooled with that mentality. It's all up to me. And that's it's not good. It's not good for our kids either because they do need those outside influences. And when we have people like loving grandparents that want to step in, it's okay. We all have different ways of doing things, and your kids will survive. They'll probably learn a lot of things that you didn't plan, and then they'll learn some of the things that you did.
yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah. Except I can't get her to teach them Spanish. Like that,
Really?
I
That's
can't get her
crazy.
to do it.
Well, maybe if you start teaching it bad enough, she'll
Oh,
like
maybe she'll
step
jump
in.
in. Oh, she's like, "But if I speak to them in Spanish, they don't understand me and they don't get done what I need them to get done," And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, "Okay, I get
Yep.
it." We've tried. I feel like Spanish is one of those things that you have to do every single day.
You do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
don't speak Spanish.
Yeah. I know. I was convicted by a friend of mine who did a TED Talk at a homeschool conference I was at last year, and she spoke about the importance of being bilingual. And of course, I this really hit me at home because I was invited to an all Spanish speaking homeschool conference and I was one of the only people that did not speak any Spanish. I had to have an interpreter, and then I sat with my Google Translate trying to figure out what everyone else was saying. And I was like, okay,
Oh my
and
goodness.
again, it goes back to what situations push you to the point where you say, "Okay, something's gotta change," and that for me, this year, that was, and so me and Duolingo have a new, relationship that I do it every day.
I've been
Um
trying to I want to actually send, when my boys get older,
Mhm.
send them down to Puerto Rico to just stay 3 months with family and help around
Oh,
the house, and
yeah.
that's homeschooling,
Mhm.
right?
It is, absolutely. That's
Learn
called immersion
Spanish.
schooling.
Yeah.
Yes. As in traveling abroad and, yes, exchange students. You can label that many different ways.
Mhm. So that's something
Absolutely.
I don't know. It's not grandparents or abuelo and abuelo, but there's
Yeah.
great well, there are no, we don't have great-grandparents anymore in Puerto Rico. It's
Mm,
mostly aunts and uncles and
good.
cousins.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. But, extending out that family
mhm,
and using those resources. Those are resources that God gave us, instead of ones that we even have to go out and find. And they do have a vested interest in your kids, their
mhm.
family.
Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, use that.
Mhm. Even if you
Awesome.
don't want to.
Yeah, if you don't want to. That's awesome. So is there anything that we haven't covered yet that you wanna touch on?
I don't know. I think well, the only thing I was thinking is I gave advice for the parents, but
Mhm.
for the grandparents that
Yeah.
wanna be involved, I think the biggest
Oh,
thing
that's
is they
good.
have to lay things down and be humble
Mhm. Mhm.
because that will reach their child or their daughter-in-law because that's what actually reached me was when
Yeah.
my I mean, along with, me realizing I can't do everything myself, but when my
Yes.
mother-in-law, she sat down and she was like, You are an amazing mom, and I just wanna love on you and bless you."
Hmm. Right. Yeah, you know where their heart is coming from versus
Yeah.
just trying to push into that space without having that conversation and really knowing where they're coming from. Because opening a door for somebody, opens a door and you often don't know why they're pushing. So that makes a lot of sense why
Right.
you should have that conversation and come in with a mutual understanding of why you want to work together and how you're going to work together and what that's going to look like and who's going to make what decisions. And, that's also important because then you feel like, we're on the same team instead of we're fighting against each other all the time.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and that we both have the same goals, values that we're trying to push forward with, helping these kids. And that's really what it comes down to. It's all about the kids
Yeah.
and then teaching them so that generationally they can carry on something even more beautiful than what's happening in your home. How wonderful for them even going in to a marriage, and a relationship with their in-laws saying, having that perspective, "This is what it was like with me growing up. This is what I want, for my family too."
Yeah.
Instead of, "Yeah, well, we kinda worked it out," and yeah, and seeing all the battle lines drawn, and, that does happen is, people walk away and they're like, "No, don't want anything to do with extended family, don't wanna repeat that." Um, but I think the more grace and compassion and understanding that you have, then it's gonna be it turns into something that's desirable versus
Mhm.
undesirable. Yep.
Yes. I think
Mhm.
it's that yes, grace,
Yep.
definitely. And it's funny because when I used to really bicker with my mother-in-law, because 16 years, there was another lady at my congregation who for some reason it came up,
Hmm.
um, and she was Puerto Rican too, so she had a little bit of some insight with the culture, and she was able to
Mhm.
kinda counsel me and
Oh,
help me
that's
understand a
awesome.
little bit more
Yeah.
of what was actually going on.
Hmm.
And
Mhm.
that was really nice, to allow me to be more open with my mother-in-law.
Right. Yeah. Allow those people to speak into your life
Mhm,
and change your perspective too. Yeah.
mhm.
So, yeah.
And the thing is, my mother-in-law, she would take my kids when we were in the hospital for that month. I mean, she would take my kids instead of going to her church, she would take them to my congregation,
Wow.
because that's where they felt safe.
Right.
So that was a
Mhm.
big sacrifice for her.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. And it sacrifices on both sides.
yeah.
And I think when you see each other mutually sacrificing to make that relationship a priority, then that just becomes a tighter bond.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Yeah. So you have a lot of resources, and I'd love for you to spend some time talking about different resources that you have for families and kind of what they can find if they look for you in the various. I'm going to share a lot of these links in the show notes
Okay.
uh, for the podcast as well as on YouTube, so that you can just click on them.
Okay. So first I have my YouTube channel, which I know we talked about the beginning, in
Yes.
the beginning.
Yeah.
It was morning. But that's Living with Eve.
Hmm.
So if you just type in Living with Eve in the YouTube, you'll find me.
Yep.
And then I also have a website, which is www. Who does www? It's just livingwitheve.com. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
Livingwitheve.com. It's under maintenance right now, but it'll be up and running probably by tomorrow or the end of the day.
Okay.
And what else do I have? What else? I have Instagram. That's just more for fun.
Uh-huh.
But I also have a Teacher Pay Teachers that I
Yeah.
just started up, and I've been putting resources up there because I've been making little booklets for my daughter. I call it Learning with God, where I'm doing
Hmm.
colors and shapes and
Yeah.
numbers, but having her do those fine motor skills, this tracing and then drawing. And
Right.
it's based off of there's a book on how to teach kids with actually it's how to teach kids with Down syndrome, and it's based off of a book. Um,
Okay.
that book specifically, the idea is there, but it's biblically based, biblically themed. And I'm literally right now, I've just putting those resources up there for free because I
Wow.
want people to use them.
Mhm.
If I'm using them and getting benefit, why not, share it with others?
Yeah.
And then I do have a book that I wrote called Freedom to Learn. And that one is just embracing the gift of homeschooling and
Mm.
not being afraid. Like I
Right.
talked about earlier, my passion is to see parents not be intimidated or afraid,
Mhm.
but to homeschool the way that where their priorities are. And so it's
Right.
just encouragement. And I shed a little light on some of the history and some of the behind the scenes kind of things that I've seen from my experience as a public school teacher and private school teacher.
Yeah.
I think it's when you've gone through that and you
Right.
see the politics and you see where the politics are coming from and the people
Right.
involved, you go, I you
Right.
just know that they're not God.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
And
they're not to you can't be intimidated by them.
right. And too often, especially like within our community too, there's this un, unspoken kind of understanding, which is not really an understanding, that the teachers are trained to do, to teach your kid. You are not. And so they can do so much better. And yet the story after story, and I know you've heard them too, is no, it works better when you're not trained and you
Yes.
love and have a passion for that child and are
Yeah.
willing to pursue what you need to pursue until it works.
And not to mention, like, what do they mean by trained? I
Yes.
mean, like, seriously. Like, in the state of Florida, I've seen people come in there with a degree in, I don't know, history, for example, and they wanna be a math teacher. All they have to do is observe some classes, take some test, and they literally throw them in the classroom because 'cause they're so desperate for teachers right now.
Wow.
And there's no I mean,
Right.
I've seen
Mhm.
so much happen, and
There's
it's
more regulation in teaching aerial silks than math.
yes, it's
It's crazy.
yeah, there's the training is not the training is the go in the classroom and experience it. I even
Mhm.
felt like my first year teaching, I didn't know what I was doing, yet I was treated like an authority figure. And it
Right.
happened so quickly, like overnight, where
Mhm.
I was the student in the public and see, I was teaching in the same county that I was raised in. So
Oh, okay.
there was times that I went back to my high school and my elementary school where I went to school, and now I'm the
Mhm.
teacher there, and everything was reversed, and it was
Wow.
surreal. I didn't feel like I was ready. I didn't feel
Yeah.
like I was capable, and I made tons of mistakes,
Oh, yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of mistakes, like some that I won't ever share. So I mean, I can't even imagine somebody yeah. And sometimes they'll just put substitute teachers in classes to
Mm,
cover, and they
right.
won't have any training. And when I say
Mhm.
any, they might have like a day. I think it was a 3-day class that the substitute teachers would get trained in, and all they had to have was, I think there was you had to have an associate's degree in
Okay.
something. That's it.
Mm, and that's it.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's why, I mean, who do you want teaching your child?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, because as a parent, I found, I had no idea what the word phonics was when I started homeschooling my kids. I figured it out.
Mhm.
Didn't do it the best, but, it's God provided. He has a lot of grace over us.
Yes.
And you just learn along with them. And
Yeah.
that's okay. It's okay that you are learning. It's good that you're learning. We need to keep doing that. And I think going back again to this whole discussion of parents, a lot of grandparents, a lot of people who are older, they lose that will, that passion to live, and to use their brain. And we see a lot of people, going, early onset of Alzheimer's and things because they're not using all of the brain that they should be using. And kids have a way of activating learning and making us young again. And yeah,
I've seen
it's
studies on that too.
yeah,
So
mhm,
that's real.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the more I dive into all of this, the longevity and things like that with, they're like, "If you're in your 50s and 60s, you should still be on the playground." And and it may look a little weird if you don't have a child with you. So, if you have a child or a grandchild, join them. And
Yeah.
I think that's, some of my greatest advice. So,
Yeah.
what would advice would you like to close with, as we wrap this conversation up?
Oh my goodness. I would just be repeating myself. Just
That's okay.
I guess seek the
You
Lord, be
repeat.
humble. The
Mhm.
biggest thing is just humility and being humble and prayer
Yeah,
and knowing how
absolutely.
important family is to God and community. And that
Yes.
homeschool doesn't have to look like public
Mm,
school.
yes. Yeah, God does value that. That's why he gave us those communities. Just
Mhm.
naturally, we have
And they
them,
won't look
and
perfect. They
right,
won't look
exactly.
perfect.
Yes. It's a training ground for all of us.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Leilani. I appreciate your conversation with me today. This has
Thanks.
been so encouraging, and I know that our listeners will have a lot to take away from just by all that you've shared, and just a lot of wisdom in that. And God gives us those struggles to just really show us what his truths in such a genuine, real way that we don't really grasp until we wrestle with it like that. And you've done a lot of wrestling,
Yeah.
maybe almost physically with your mother-in-law,
Mhm.
but in the end, it's turned into something beautiful, and I'm thankful that you were able to share it with us today.
Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely. So make sure you check out all of Leilani's resources. I will share those links in the show notes, both through the podcast and on the YouTube channel. And then next time, we're going to be talking about motivating writers. Ideas are genius, and how to take your child's ideas and turn them into writing for them. Because so many kids ask, how do I write? What do I write about? Well, my guests next week are going to be talking about that. So you'll want to join us then. So, thanks again, Leilani. Appreciate your
Thanks.
time. And thank you, all of you. God bless. And I will see you all next week here on the show. Bye, everyone.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool. Go to spedhomeschool.com to get resources and support for teaching your unique learner at home.